started. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending upon where in the world you are. This is Alexandra Gibson. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Guten. Really excited today to be joined by Fahim Naeem. He was previously a category manager at Amazon, where he owned and managed a multi-hundred-million-dollar category and one of the largest categories in the US. During his tenure, he was able to grow his business more than 50% despite a flat market. And previous to Amazon, Fahim worked in finance at Office Depot, including several special projects for the C-suite. So Fahim founded eShoppertunity in 2014 to help brands better understand and grow their online business. Fahim has spoken at several leading e-commerce conferences, webinars, podcasts, and more. So really excited to have you here, Fahim. Thanks so much for joining us. And just want to mention one other quick housekeeping item to all of the listeners and viewers out there is that we will be recording this and sending out the recording once we're finished. Additionally, if you have any questions, feel free to write those in the questions tab, and I'll be looking at them, and also my colleague, Frank, who you all are probably used to seeing some of his emails. So yeah, without further ado, Fahim, take it away. I'll try and kind of ask questions where I know some of our partners have questions and have been trying to pick our brains from the Guten side on, but excited today to hear more about and your expertise.
Thanks for having me. I've been given the opportunity to talk about Amazon in about 15 to 20 minutes, which may be the most difficult thing I've had to do in a long time. There's certainly so much information that we could potentially get into, so why don't I just jump straight in. Quick summary of who I am. I think Alexander's already mentioned most of this, so I can skip that. So why are we here today? Why talk about Amazon? Today is Amazon Prime Day. If you've been living under a rock and haven't received thousands of notifications or emails about it, oftentimes when we're working with brands, we hear the question, why is it worth selling on Amazon? Why do I have to pay all that money and not own the customer relationship when I'd rather build it on my own website or other places? And Amazon is difficult to work with, and Amazon is too slow and continues to go below my map price, yada, yada, yada. The reason why, and some of those things are certainly true, is that whether you want your customers to be there or not, they certainly are. There's a variety of studies that show that customers start their product research on Amazon. One of the most popular studies was one done by Bloomreach that said that 55% of customers start product research on Amazon versus 28% on Google and 16% on a retailer's or brand site. And that's pretty incredible to think about. And while I was at Amazon, I remember that number was closer to 50-50, Amazon versus search engines. And just in a couple of years, that number has now doubled in terms of the number of customers starting on Amazon versus Google. So even if the goal is not to make Amazon your number one sales channel, being on it is going to be very important for a variety of reasons. Some of those reasons are, one, it can help introduce you to new customers and give them more confidence to purchase your brand. We've worked with over 100 brands to date, many startups or brands that are new to Amazon, and they've been very surprised with the different types of customers that they've acquired through Amazon versus customers that had traditionally been buying on their own website. So there's certainly a population out there that will only buy on Amazon or would certainly prefer to buy something on Amazon for a variety of reasons, whether it's the shipping, whether it's the customer service, whether it's the confidence. Two of them is they're actually spending more. And there's a variety of studies that show that when customers buy on Amazon, they tend to buy more, even from a specific brand, for a variety of those reasons that we've just mentioned. Next is whether you want to be on Amazon or not is sometimes outside of your control. And what I mean by that is as you start growing and get a larger presence on your own website and start making your own name, Amazon is an open marketplace. And by open marketplace, in the vast majority of cases, there's nothing you can do to prevent your brand being presented on Amazon if another third party or distributor decides to create a listing on your behalf. For example, this often happens with Shark Tank brands. We worked with a variety of Shark Tank brands when they started saying, no, well, we don't only want to focus on our own website. We don't want to worry about Amazon. And then when you said, let's check on Amazon right now, they're very surprised that there's listings created by other people on Amazon for that brand. And who better to present the brand than you directly? Very often when somebody else is creating a listing on your behalf, they're probably taking shortcuts. They don't have the right images. They don't have the right titles and bullets. Sometimes it's very frustrating. We've worked with brands where, let's say in the supplement space, the title says it's 12 milligrams, the bullet says it's 4 milligrams, and the picture shows that it's 8 milligrams. It's something that confusing because somebody probably spent 10 seconds creating it versus you would take more time doing this on your own. So I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind is if you're not on Amazon, somebody can create it for you.
So Fahim, that's actually a very good question. I wanted to ask you a quick question about that because a lot of our partners are e-commerce stores that are print on demand. So many of them own or license the artwork that they have they're added to particular products. So, and I think I saw in a lot of the questions that people were concerned about there being, copycats, people kind of undercutting them. What do people do in that situation?
Great question. And the high level summary, because it'll be difficult to get into a lot of detail, is it depends. There are a variety of tools that Amazon has that you can, if you own the brand, and if especially if you have a registered trademark or copyright on that brand, there's a variety of different ways where you can list complaints via Amazon's portals to Amazon to say that somebody's either infringing on your trademark or you have the copyright for something and somebody else is listing it without authorization, or it's invalid, or it's fake product. And through a variety of those tools, some of those tools are called brand registry. Sometimes you can do it through a variety of different portals on Seller Central, Vendor Central. That will ultimately will provide you the ability to reach out to that brand that's listing it, and they will be notified that the brand owner has said that you're violating their trademark, or this is inauthentic product, and unless they're able to refute that and get you to retract that violation, that their listing and or account would go down. Sometimes it becomes a little bit more of a longer process and getting all the ducks in a row, but there are a variety of tools on Amazon. If you actually do have registered trademarks or copyrights or patents, where you can protect that from other people that are unlawfully listing against that. That said, just to clarify, if somebody has your legitimate product, let's say you had a big sale on your website where you were 50% off and somebody bought 25 of your units, and if they're actually legitimate units, that does not mean that you can necessarily restrict them from selling against your listing at a price lower than what you want. So if it is legitimate product, that one's a lot more difficult. There are a couple of different tools that are sometimes available, but these tools are more to stop people that are unlawfully violating your trademark or copyright, less to stop people who actually have legitimate product of yours that want to resell it on Amazon. Does that make sense?
So yes, definitely. So there is recourse that Amazon has in place, and that shouldn't keep people or scare people away from selling on Amazon.
Absolutely, correct. And again, in many of those cases, whether you list it on Amazon or not, it's very possible those listings already exist on Amazon. And unless you're actually selling on Amazon, it's much more difficult to get those taken down when you're not selling on Amazon than when you are. So mega brands like Nike and I guess fill in the blank have had similar issues on Amazon, and until they decided to actually engage with Amazon and list and sell on Amazon, they weren't able to take down many of those counterfeit or different types of listings. And once you do decide to sell to Amazon or on Amazon, then you do have access to a variety of tools to start taking those down.
Great, good to know.
One quick, I am a corporate finance guy by nature, so I can't have a deck without any financial slides, even though there's a lot of text on here. One thing to think about is I often also hear people say Amazon is so expensive. And technically, if you compare it to traditional wholesale, it's not that expensive. And also, if you compare it to your own CPA, so your cost per acquisition, or your CAC, your customer acquisition cost, it's actually not that bad. So it's very dependent on the specific brand. But if you were acquiring the customer to your own website via Facebook ad or Google AdWords, and you started doing the numbers to see how much money am I spending to acquire that customer, and comparing that to your customer lifetime value, there's a couple of slides on here on that. If you compare that versus giving Amazon somewhere between 20 to 30%, let's say, all-in fees, oftentimes Amazon is not that expensive, especially to acquire a new customer. And what this slide is trying to get across is there's a variety of things to look at when determining if Amazon is worthwhile, and any other marketplace or any other website on the same matter. For one, cannibalization, so the amount of sales that you're stealing from your own site to Amazon, in most cases is not as high as most brands think, from my experience. And two, a general good strategy that I think is kind of best in class are brands that acquire a new customer via Amazon, and then long-term give the customer a reason to buy on your own website or platform. So oftentimes a customer has never heard about you, they buy you on Amazon, they have a great experience, and whether they come back on Amazon or they Google your brand name and find your own brand store, there's a variety of different ways to get that customer to continue to come back and build that customer lifetime value on your own platform while acquiring the customer via Amazon. Another quick slide, just so we're all on the same page. You probably, if you're not very familiar with Amazon, you probably have heard these terms a bunch of times and wondered what exactly they were and what are the pros and cons. We won't get into a lot of detail, but at a high level, there's two different types of ways to sell on Amazon. One of them is called Seller Central, and there's a couple of different operational fulfillment options within that. And then the other one's called Vendor Central. At a high level, Vendor Central is wholesale. You sell to Amazon, Amazon's your customer, they give you a weekly purchase order if they want your product, and once they receive it, it's their inventory and their product. And they give you some tools to try to influence what that looks like to the end customer, but that end customer is actually their customer. That's what being a vendor is. The alternative is being what's called a seller. And a seller means you're using Amazon as a platform, but you ultimately own that inventory until the end customer receives it. And there's two different options within it. One of them is called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. And this is the option where you ask Amazon to manage the fulfillment for you. So it's still your inventory. Think of Amazon as a 3PL. You decide you want to send 100 units to their warehouse. They sell 25 units to end customers, and there's 75 units in their warehouse. Those 75 units are still yours, and you can get them back whenever you want. That's what Fulfillment by Amazon is. And then the other option is called MFN, because Amazon loves acronyms. And that's the option where you drop ship directly to the customer. So there's a lot of information out there. I find a lot of it is not adequate or fair evaluation between the platforms. I spend a lot of time in the forums and guides and a variety of different tools to see what people are saying. And sometimes you hear the sentiment that it never makes sense to be a vendor. I can't imagine why you would ever want to sell the wholesale, and it's so much better being a seller. And sometimes you hear the other way around. My summary is that it actually really does depend on the brand. Starting off with Seller Central is oftentimes earlier, but many of the brands that are doing north of, let's say, 1 million or 5 million a year are vendors for one reason or another. And here's some of the general pros and cons, and that's the extent of what we're going to get into for this topic. Pros and cons, the biggest ones for Seller Central is you have a little bit more direct control over pricing. It's a little bit quicker to launch. Generally, it's a little bit cheaper than Vendor Central, and it's a little bit quicker to execute promotions. Cons are many of the tools and merchandising opportunities, things like gift guides, a lot of the things that you're probably seeing today from Prime Day, a lot of those specific tools are generally reserved primarily or exclusively for vendors. So you may not always have access to the same set of tools. There's this idea of your SKUs or account getting suspended if you ever violate Amazon's terms of service, which are much more difficult to get suspended on the vendor side. So that's a big concern many brands have on Seller Central. you don't really have access to Pantry, Amazon Prime Pantry, or Subscribe and Save to the same level, or Fresh, or Prime Now, and some other types of programs on Seller Central as you do as a vendor. And the final thing is, if you are a seller, a customer has the ability to email you a question, and you have to respond within 24 hours. That includes weekends. That includes holidays. Some people outsource this. Some people manage this internally. But say a requirement on Seller Central that's not required on Vendor Central. That the converse is certainly true for Vendor Central in terms of the pros is access to a lot more tools, higher conversion generally, and a little bit more control over a detail page. I'll stop there because I think this could probably open a can of worms that we could get a lot deeper on, but I'd rather talk about on the next couple of slides, what can you do to grow your business on Amazon?
I was just going to ask Fahim, if you were a small business and especially you had on-demand e-commerce, so you weren't holding a lot of inventory, which of those selling platforms would you recommend if, for example, someone was your client?
It's a good question, and it's tough to know without having all the details. Generally, FBA is probably a good way to start, and then many brands, quote unquote, graduate to Vendor Central. But starting with Amazon, it's already such a different platform and than selling on your own website or anywhere else that usually a quick way to get your feet wet would be on Seller Central via FBA. And once you start scaling, and some of these things can really make a difference, you want to be on the electronics gift guide, or you want to be on the fashion storefront, or you want to be on corporate emails that are sent to customers right before Black Friday and Cyber Monday. That's when, and as your business starts scaling, that's oftentimes when you want to start thinking about Vendor Central. So I don't generally have a rule of thumb, but I'd say if you're earlier on and your volume is probably, let's say, south of $1 million annually, Seller Central and FBA is probably a good way to start. And then as your business continues to scale, Vendor Central can or can't make a lot of sense at that point.
And on the Seller Central side, you can do MFN, correct?
Correct.
Because a lot of people do not want to hold inventory, and I've also heard that if you have stockouts, if it's fulfilled by Amazon, that can also greatly detract from the algorithm as far as how high up your product is promoted.
Yep, certainly. You can also even drop ship to an end customer and show up Prime eligible, which is a fairly new program. It's called Seller Fulfill Prime. It's fairly expensive in that you have to pay for 2-day delivery and you have to confirm orders same day or next day. But at least it's an option that now exists that didn't really exist before. The benefit of being Prime eligible or of being FBA versus typical MFN is that Prime eligibility status, which does go a long way because a lot of customers, when they're searching, will filter on only Prime eligible offers. But certainly MFN is also another option. What a lot of brands also do is they do a combination. You can have for the same SKU FBA and MFN. So if Amazon goes out of stock on FBA, have an MFN quote unquote backup offer so that you don't lose all of the velocity and lose the customer to another place. That's oftentimes one strategy, or have some high moving products on FBA so that customers discover you, and then have a lot more of your long tail catalog on MFN. That's another common best practice strategy.
Yeah, and while we're on this slide too, Josh had a question from the audience. What is the difference in the inventory required amongst these different platforms?
So on FBA, you largely manage how much inventory you want to send to Amazon within certain parameters. There's a limit of how much inventory you can send, although that's actually just changing right now. If you've been on the platform for more than a quarter, you theoretically could have access to unlimited inventory. Until that time, and when you launch from Amazon, there'll be a maximum number of units that you can send, and I think it's 5,000 for normal size products. But you can decide if you want to send 50 or you want to send 1,000, as long as you're under that maximum. As a vendor, Amazon tells you exactly the number of units they want to buy from you, and you can fulfill no more than that. If they sent you a purchase order, which is a PO of 750 units, and you only have 500 in stock, you can confirm 500 units, but you can't send them 900. So it's a lot more prescriptive on exactly the amount of inventory that you can send as a vendor. In terms of FBA, you can decide how much you want to sell, and then in terms of MFN, you control that in real time. Most brands, if they have no issue, and as long as they are able to print on demand, they have an inventory limit of 999, and they continue to update that. So they're basically saying that they'll always have stock once they get an order. So you can control that a lot more in real time in MFN.
Great, thank you.
So how to win on Amazon. I know we only have about 7 minutes left. There's a variety of different things that you can do. I'm going to focus mostly on the next couple slides on optimizing detail pages, because I think there's a huge opportunity there. But the other vehicle is just so I can pay lip service to them. Amazon does have a PPC ad platform that is starting to become a lot more robust, and it's almost a requirement now if you sell on Amazon, if you want customers to discover your product. There's pricing and deals, so being very smart with pricing and running deals so that customers can discover. Encouraging early reviews. Your first 5 to 10 to 15 reviews are going to be the most important reviews, so making sure that you have a strategy on how to do that effectively. Driving external traffic is becoming more and more important. There's literally hundreds of millions of products now on Amazon.com, so just in the U.S. So how can you separate yourself? Certainly there's a variety of tools on Amazon, but more and more brands are thinking about ways off of Amazon, whether that's through bloggers, whether that's through emailing customers and directing them to Amazon for sales, whether that's through social media, whether that's through slick deals or other types of third-party platforms. Driving external traffic is becoming very important. There's also a variety of different marketing placements available on Amazon as you start scaling. Some of them are pay-to-play, but they can be very valuable, being on a corporate email, being on the banner, on a category page, etc. And then the last thing is following Amazon's TOS, which is Terms of Service, is very important. I think there's a lot of information out there, hacks and black hat tricks and whatever you want to call it, that emphasize things that are probably not directly allowed by Amazon. They're generally risky, even if they work in the short term, because once you get caught once or twice and somebody reports you, whether it's a customer or a competitor, your account can either get suspended and or get terminated. So if you're serious about growing your brand in the long term, at least something that we talk to about with our brands regularly is making sure you're doing it the right way. You want to be smart, you want to be quick, but you want to do it the right way as well. And now here's some specific examples on detail pages, because I think these are things that can resonate with everybody. Pictures matter. Pictures are very, very important, and I think most brands don't spend enough time on images, especially their main images. Here's an example here of a brand that had previously just a picture, a quick picture. It looks like it was probably done on an iPhone 3G of the image on the left, and then they transformed these images to a couple of different types of images that you can see on the right. One is a higher res image, a little bit more gloss, a lot clearer what the product is. And they showed the back of the product, which is very important in highlighting things like gluten-free and some of the other certifications they have. And then one of the most important things is lifestyle imagery, especially for secondary images on Amazon. It's very important to let the customer visualize what this product looks like when somebody's wearing it, or if it's in somebody's hand, or if somebody's using it in real time. And here's an example, not very complicated, but it gets the message across on what they want to convey. So images are very, very important, and something that I think everybody on the call right now should certainly spend some time on if they're thinking about launching on Amazon. It's less how do I get any image up, and it's more what's the most ideal type of image that a customer may want to see or attract, and start there and start working backwards. Next thing are titles. Would you buy this? I probably wouldn't, and I love this example because I think what Amazon is starting to become is what Google was a couple of years ago, where everything is how do you game it for SEO purposes, and how do I put in as many keywords as possible so I can show up higher for search ranks, and those types of things. And while I think that matters to a certain degree, prioritize the customer experience over anything else. If you were a customer and you saw this, even if it had a bunch of different keywords, would you want to buy this? Probably not. probably look spammy, probably not going to focus on all the keywords on here, probably would skip to the next listing. So I think about it. If you were the customer or somebody who is brand new to your product was looking at it, what would they have the tolerance to look at, or what are the absolute most important things that they should look at, and do you have that conveyed? And here's again an extreme example of something that you shouldn't do. Here's an example of a brand that we worked with previously, kind of a before and after, so you can visualize. This main image, a little difficult to understand what this is. Nobody really cares about what this looks like in a 12-pack, and I can't tell, are these little bottles? What else is in here? Is this just one big piece, etc.? So the picture is not very clear.
Yeah, it
The
looks like you
title
have
isn't very
all of
clear
them.
on how many units are on here, as you can see, and what exactly this is. And then the bullets, which you probably can't read because they're a little bit small, they're a little bit long and clunky, and they don't focus on the most important thing that customers want. Here's an example of after. So the picture is a little bit clearer that it's one bottle and then there's multiple packs. The title is a little bit clearer on how many units are in there, what exactly are the key ingredients, and the bullet points are also a lot clearer and answer questions that customers are looking for. There's a real life example with some of these detail page edits. The sales for this product are up 3x versus before the changes. So this shows you the power of making sure your titles, your bullets, and your images on Amazon are crystal clear. Last slide is the bonus slide. How do you beat Amazon? So we talked a lot about why selling on Amazon is important and some of the ways that you can win on Amazon. At the same time, you're probably selling on a variety of other channels, including your own website. How do you beat Amazon? And the key is personalization. There's a lot of different stats that are out there by saying things like using a customer's name on an email and making sure that the email is relevant are significantly more effective than anything else you can do. There's also a variety of studies where customers said if a site had better personalization, they would rather buy from that brand over buying from Amazon. And again, when you're selling on a marketplace like Amazon, you don't always own the customer relationship, and that customer ultimately will be owned and managed through Amazon and their platform. So things that you can think about as a small business, as an e-commerce brand is, what can I do on my own website, even while I'm listing on Amazon, to win over that customer in the long term, and making sure that they're continuing to come back and look at my product offerings and buy from me.
Great. Yeah, this is all really, really good information. We actually have a bunch of questions that I would love if you have a little more time for us to be able to ask you while we have you on the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Ken was asking about, I know a lot of our partners who are on demand and maybe have a lot of different designs, and they're all created one-off, they're printed as soon as they're ordered, asking about GTIN management and how that exemption works, and that seems to be a big obstacle or kind of stumbling block for a lot of people. Do you have any recommendations on that?
So Amazon has changed their process a little bit. There used to be, many people call it brand registry 1.0, which gave you automatic G10 exception across the board. You're still allowed, if you don't have a UPC on a product, you're still allowed to request Amazon for G10 exception. And it's fairly easy from what I've heard from brands that we've worked with, have heard of, that don't have UPCs and do not want to have it going forward. And we've worked with a bunch of apparel brands that similarly have had G10 exceptions. So there is a process to apply for it. It's changed from what it used to be. So I think maybe some of the confusion is how to get there. But when you're on Amazon, if you go in the help section and search G10 exception, there is an application and there's some information that they request, but it's certainly still possible to get a G10 exception across the entire catalog. So you don't have to have a UPC or other identification number tied to it.
Great, because I know that the UPC codes, buying those for every individual SKU size, color,
Yep.
that can get pretty expensive.
Absolutely, yes.
So we have some international folks outside of the US on the line, and they are wondering if a lot of the notes and things that you've talked about are relevant outside of just Amazon.com. And kind of the second question to that is, let's say if someone's in Canada, should they start with Amazon.ca or start with Amazon.com?
So great questions. Almost everything on here is applicable to all Amazon marketplaces, as well as probably other marketplaces generally. So I think things like optimizing detail pages and pictures and why it makes sense to sell on all these platforms, I think is relevant across the board. Amazon.com is certainly a very, very powerful marketplace and platform, and customers are continuing to search on Amazon.com, even if they live in other countries. So until recently, Amazon just launched in the process of launching in Australia and Southeast Asia. Customers there have continued to buy from Amazon.com versus local retailers for a variety of reasons. Same thing in Canada. I think Amazon.com is certainly the most powerful and popular of all the different platforms globally, of the Amazon properties globally, so it makes sense for a variety of cases. It does get a little bit complicated if you're not based here, if you can't figure out fulfillment, although there are a large number of international sellers that are continuing to list on Amazon that work with partners to manage fulfillment locally in the U.S., and they have no issue. And I think I read somewhere that the vast majority of new sellers on Amazon are actually international. Amazon.com are actually international and not even based in the U.S. So certainly I think Amazon.com is a great way to get started. That said, it's also very crowded from the supply side. So brands, we've seen some brands had phenomenal success on Amazon Canada because it has 1/100th the competition that it does on Amazon.com. At the same time, the demand there is fairly low. So I think it depends on the product category and fulfillment challenges and opportunities. But if you work with a partner, having success in Amazon.com is certainly a great launch pad for other countries, because you'll learn a lot about the customers, you'll learn a lot about Amazon, you learn a lot about the ins and outs. And while every country will be a little bit different, the vast majority of how Amazon operates is similar, regardless of the country that you're operating in.
That's kind of a good segue into another question. You know, you're talking about how crowded Amazon.com is, because that's really where most of the demand is. So that's where people are putting the supply. So Julie is asking, you know, do small businesses who are only just now starting, do they truly have a chance to sell on Amazon, or are they just going to be kind of crowded out by all the noise?
So it's a great question. I think it depends on focus and priority. If you type in, the great thing about Amazon is while a lot of the large brands are there, there are tons and tons of brands that are small, brands that started off fairly recent, small brands that have gained fire and caught fire on Amazon and have really scaled their business. If you go into the beauty category, you go into fashion. One of the examples that Amazon likes to give a lot is if you type in, I think black dress is a specific example. You go on there and you look at the number of listings. There's hardly a brand that you've heard of before that shows up in the first couple of pages of listings, which I think shows that there are a bunch of small businesses that have succeeded on Amazon. That said, it certainly requires a different skill set and set of focus than acquiring customers on your own website. So I think when I say it comes down to priority and focus, how much does that brand really want to focus on optimizing Amazon? Again, there's a PPC ad platform that you have to kind of learn as you go. There's the day-to-day Amazon nuances. There's answering customer questions. There's researching competitors on a regular basis. There's thinking about driving external traffic, a lot of the different things we talked about now. But if a brand is willing to put in the time and effort because they see the ultimate value in it, I think absolutely there are thousands, if not more, of wonderful case studies of brands that started on Amazon and have really made a large name for themselves and ultimately expanded to other platforms. One quick example is Anchor. So Anchor is a very popular brand on Amazon that launched, I think, about 6 years ago on Amazon, just selling power packs, and they were a little bit more affordable than the other brands that were on there. And now they've expanded. They're in a variety of different categories. They sell on their own website in a very strong business, and they sell, I believe, in other channels as well. And they've built over $100 million business on Amazon and are one of the largest sellers on Amazon. And again, this is not Samsung. This is not SanDisk or some of the other large players that you could think about. It's a brand who basically started off on Amazon and decided to focus there and had a lot of success. So I think it's certainly possible for small businesses. That said, the toughest thing for small business to do is say no, and you have to learn how to say no and figure out what are your top priorities on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's ultimately up to that brand to decide. I think the potential is certainly there if they wanted to answer the question.
So when you're first starting out, and let's say you just open your account, your seller account with Amazon, and you list your first, let's say, 10 products, how are those going to be found if you don't yet have reviews, or you haven't made any sales yet?
Yep, and that's becoming more and more difficult every day. I'd say maybe 3 years ago, it was a lot easier than it was today, and Amazon has started to crack down and provide a lot of I guess parity, and they've added a bunch of other restrictions on what you can and can't do because they don't want people gaming it. So there's a variety of things that you can do. I think the toughest part, to be transparent, of selling on Amazon is that initial launch right now. But I'd say what brands that do well with new launches, they have a bunch of common traits. They're making sure that their pages are absolutely optimized to the best degree. They're driving external traffic. They're running PPC ads on Amazon. And even if they're not very profitable at the beginning, they're realizing the importance of doing some of that. They're continuing to optimize back-end keywords and other types of tools so that they can get discovered. They're running promotions on Amazon so that they can get discovered in a variety of different places, et cetera, et cetera. There certainly is a large group of sellers that are doing more than that, and that's where we go into the TOS, following Amazon's TOS. There are certainly a bunch of brands that are buying reviews on Facebook groups. There's certainly brands that are reaching out to friends and family and other resources that are not technically allowed by Amazon to do that. So again, it's ultimately the brand's choice. We generally advocate it's better to play by the rules and just be smart and efficient in the long term, and certainly those first 5 or 10 reviews for the first few products are going to be the most difficult. But when you do get them, it becomes a lot easier to scale, which is the good news. So I think there's a huge initial barrier, but everybody faces that. And once you do crack that code, so to speak, I think it becomes a lot easier when you have 10 or 15 reviews to scale your products and add new products, because a lot more people will start finding your products. But it does require a lot of the rolling up the sleeves and doing the things that we just talked about to get there.
So don't give up if it's not reaping fruit right away.
Absolutely. I think gone are the days where, for most brands, you just launch the product and sit back and hope that it'll catch fire. I think there's a lot more hand-holding that's required and pushing to get over that initial hump. And when you do get over that hump, then again, you're in a much better shape. But if you're simply listing the product on Amazon and sitting back and waiting for it to catch fire, chances are a lot more difficult because of all the reasons we just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of questions here that I just wanted to quickly answer that are kind of more Gooten specific from some of our partners. So Tim is asking if Gooten has an integration with Amazon that allows him to create products on Gooten, and then the orders are processed through Amazon without him touching them. So kind of an automatic fulfillment. At this point, that can only be done through OrderDesk or through Shopify. So there isn't a native integration that has Amazon that connects directly to Gooten, but we do have a lot of people that use OrderDesk very successfully, or something like GoDataFeed can also work there. On the Shopify side, the jury is still a little out. I think the Amazon integration that they had used to work better, but now we're getting a lot of reports that it's not quite as good as it was. So I would definitely look at something more like OrderDesk or GoDataFeed that could hook right into Gooten. The second kind of Gooten type question Francine asked is, how do I know if Gooten products will arrive to customers on time based on Amazon's shipping time requirements? That is a very good question and is very important because Amazon, I guess, Fahim, you would probably speak to this more. If you are out of, if you're not setting expectations properly and your end customers are constantly getting their packages late, that definitely is black marks against you. Is that right?
Absolutely. The good news is you can, assuming you're talking about the MFN option, you can adjust your shipping periods and requirements. There's also something called order handling time. So that's the amount of time you have before you confirm the order. And that's oftentimes the case where brands miss that deadline and they ultimately get dinged. And if you do it enough, not only do you get dinged, they can actually suspend your account. But I think the standard is 1 to 2 days order handling time. I think now it's 2 days. You can simply increase that to 3 to 4 days if you need a little bit more time to confirm orders generally, especially around holidays and some of that. So absolutely you can adjust it, but you do want to make sure you're meeting that requirement, because the last thing Amazon wants is for people to be promised a product a certain day and it comes several weeks later on a regular basis. Certainly it happens sometimes, but if it's a regular occurrence, Amazon will certainly look into your account and to your listings.
Definitely. So Francine, kind of on the more Guten side, exactly what Fahim said. You want to make sure that you're setting the expectations of the production time based on what product it is that you're selling, and then your shipping times should reflect the methods that are going to be used by those products. So you can put that in. It might automatically say 3 days in Amazon, but you can set that based on what the Guten shipping and production times are. We have a lot of our partners that do that and do that quite successfully. So that is something that you definitely need to do. Otherwise, you will get dinged and potentially be shut down by Amazon, because they don't want unhappy end customers. Well, I think that we've probably taken up too much of your time already. We had some other questions, but hopefully I can get those over to you, Fahim, and you and I can maybe send out another email answering some of those questions. But wanted to thank you so much again today for your time, especially Fahim mentioned to us that he had just gotten LASIK yesterday, so hopefully staring at the screen hasn't been too much of an eyesore, literally and figuratively. But thank you again so much, and I think we all learned a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to see what other questions come by and help however I can. So best of luck to everybody again. As I think Alexandra said, don't fret too much. Amazon can certainly be a challenge, but when you do crack it, it could be very rewarding at the end of the day, especially as an additional sales channel. So don't give up hope too early on.
Absolutely. Yep. Roll up your sleeves. Get the work done. Perfect. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.